All right. DevOps, what's in a word? So DevOps is everywhere. 2 years ago, we did the first conference in Belgium, probably you know. After that, I got totally sick. I got fatigues, headaches, whatever I could get. I kept on working. But let's say in April the next year, I had to go really to my doctor and said, okay, I don't feel well, I have a problem. He said, you take some rest, it'll go away. Okay, really? Does it just go away, headache, fatigues? Yeah, it'll go away. But it didn't go away. So I could not get up in the morning. This is a real story, so I'm not kidding you. So I couldn't get up in the morning. I had no ways to do, but DevOps kept me going because I kept reading stuff, and that's the only thing I could do for days. I went to see those doctors. Of course, when you're sick, you have to see a doctor. And then I come to a specialist, and he says to me, I'm going to look at your ears to see maybe there's something wrong with your ears or your head. And they couldn't find me anything. So nothing was wrong with me. And still, I got symptoms that I felt really bad, and I couldn't do anything. So I felt like this business guy talking to the specialists saying nothing's wrong, everything's okay. So that's what DevOps is everywhere once you start noticing. So they kept saying, I can see nothing wrong. So for me, there is nothing wrong. So how does that sound familiar as the way we are doing IT? Very. It even gets scarier. So when in Belgium we have good health insurance. So I was thinking, you know what? I will get paid. I had to stop my job. I will get money by the insurance. They said, if you can't prove that you have something specific, it's probably mental. So there goes my SLA, useless. It's very strange. DevOps is everywhere. So I finally found a doctor after seeing all those traditional doctors. And there was a friend who said, yeah, maybe you should try this one. He gets like, people are happy, they go to him like, he's like a Dr. House. You go to him, he asks you questions, and then he makes you better. It feels scary. My father was a doctor, my grandfather was a doctor on both sides. And so you go outside these traditional boundaries, and there you are talking to the doctor who says, I have a new method of looking at things, but I'm having so hard time proving to the traditional academics that it actually works. I know it works because people come to me, I treat them, and they're happy, and they go away, and they recommend things to people. So again, very familiar with DevOps. You have to prove that DevOps work. You have to say this is something that will happen. But you have to really prove it against the traditional establishment. And it's rather strange that you have to do it. So in a nutshell, I'm not going to bore you anymore. I got better, and he helped me. So, but it gives you an idea of how a user or a business person actually feels when he's trying to get what he wants and what he needs. Okay, so now for the real DevOps, the one we have been talking about, the separation between the traditional dev and the ops. So in my perspective, historically, it's, at least in Europe, there was a large tendency around agile development that actually drove or pressured the business and then moved all the way through to dev, test, and ops. So there was becoming a pressure of moving towards doing something here as well. Traditional agile, let's say it stopped here, but it's like the pressure was just building up inside the world of continuous integration and that work. Mostly, let's say in the US or maybe probably in Australia too, there's the large-scale web operations who also gave the pressure, but maybe from a different side, from the user perspective, like this is massive scale, we need to do something, we need to change the way we work. So these kind of pressures, that actually led to people developing new tools. So you see the three layers that are traditionally there. Like continuous delivery was a real enabler. The book by Jess Humble, and so infrastructure as code at the same time, they're coming around. So the tools were actually like kind of connecting to each other. You will notice that in this book of continuous delivery, there's a lot of hints of using infrastructure as code. So people have been experimenting on the tools level, and that got people from multiple disciplines collaborating. And what happened is that at the people level, these people started to work together. There was like no real defined process between them. It's just people getting together and working because they had to get the job done. So the testers were there, and actually there was a connection. So they started doing, like, from the agile world, all these small and frequent iterations. So dev to ops, ops to dev. It's about creating a feedback loop. It's nothing more than that. It's just talking to each other and then trying to figure out how you have to do things better and like getting feedback. And that's what actually created DevOps as such. Nothing more than that. It's no special thing. There's no grand scheme behind DevOps of doing something really crazy. It's just like the first DevOps days, there was no definition. Just these people got together, nothing more. So it started by people being professional. Actually, that get you into collaboration. Probably the timing is wrong. So the first one is they stop being an asshole. So they stop saying like you are doing it wrong and you are doing it wrong. So this became a bit professional. Say let's just settle our differences and start working together as a professional. So by being professional, it created a trust between each other because we're actually collaborating. That's actually the most important point of DevOps. It's collaborating and getting feedback between all people. And that creates respect. If you can actually collaborate with somebody who knows and who trusts you, that creates a respect. The respect that we've been so long lacking between the two groups. But it kind of got lost while people started playing like the password operator from hell or something. And then this scheme just didn't work out. So DevOps, nothing more than creating cross-silo positive feedback. It's not about giving negative feedback like you suck or something. That's not the idea. But on a bigger picture, this is what actually DevOps got together, but made a link between the business and the market. So this is what I call like DevOps XL. Not something most people see when they think of the word DevOps, but this is actually why we're doing it. And the only thing we did is connect the few dots that were there of going to that system. So time to market, doing faster feedback loop, and actually frictionless IT. It used to be so frictionful, frictionless. That's where we aim at. So DevOps. Number one question, how do you get started? Anyone who knows the answer by heart? No.
Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah. So introducing DevOps or getting started is nothing different than doing any other change. People who had to introduce ITIL or had to introduce Agile, they all had the same way of working. But before you start, be aware of the critics. Because whatever you do, there's going to be resistance. In a quick run through, people are saying like DevOps is a scam. I don't know if you saw the blog post, but this was actually the title of a blog post. That got a huge attention. But one of the other critics is like, it's nothing new. And it's true. It's just like extending the IDs, everything that was already there, but just putting them across silo. So nothing more than that, applying the same principles, but just looking further than just the wording in the Agile Manifesto, just looking further in the Lean IT. It's nothing more. But you have to have a different mindset of collaboration in mind between the cross silos when you read these things. The other one came up. DevOps, we've been doing that for years. It's nothing new. good for you, you know? If you actually have been collaborating, it's a good time now to share your story to the community. Because people are saying to me, the good thing about DevOps is that we have a common term to label every story and things we have been doing in the field so that we kind of find this instead of like Googling for years with keywords we don't know. So this is just helpful. It's good that you've been doing it for years, but the term helps in doing it. It's a bad name. So we've seen in the introduction, I'm a dev, I'm an ops, whatever. It should have been like something like this, the biz, dev, net, QA, sec, whatever. Startup, somebody named it. Okay, it doesn't matter. Somehow this is the term that got the attention. It conveys the message because maybe people know that pain field very much, but it's like star, dev star, ops star. That's what you have to think about. So it goes all the way through. So it's too ops-centric, too dev-centric, too whatever business. They won't say it's too business-centric though. But we've seen, I don't know, Lindsay, did you have like the numbers of the?
Yeah, they're right there in front of you.
Okay. So they're kind of good here, no? Very equally. So it tends to be that people read stories on the internet and say, oh, it's too dev-centric. But it's just based on their background, that they read things that interest them. But they're actually like equally number of blog posts by ops, by devs, by people in process, or QA. So it doesn't really matter. So it's too broad. DevOps. I don't know if you looked up the Wikipedia definition, which is only like scratching the surface, but this was actually the first year of DevOps. Everybody was trying to get out the definition of what DevOps is. It's like the cloud, you know? There is no one definition. But it's still useful, no? So why bother? It's like collaboration, many forums, whatever is for you the extension of collaboration. That's good. So don't worry about that 20 definition. Whatever works for you in the collaboration, that's fine. It's too tool-centric. Not enough business focused. I agree. So if people are saying, I'm a DevOps, how many people say I've been using tools that are related to DevOps? Yeah, how many people? There's one brave who admits. But actual collaboration, cross-silo, I don't know. It's business getting involved. Not too much. But, you know, it's not about the tools. It's about collaboration. So for me, it's kind of like you can talk about monitoring, logging, packaging, whatever. It's very interesting. And I really enjoy talking about that too. But for me, if you don't use this cross-silo for feedback or collaboration, this just becomes ops. It's not DevOps. That's it. It's great that you use these tools, and you should, probably, but it's not DevOps. And that's what gets people upset, because people are but thinking more and more that DevOps is about those tools, and that whatever fits in here, whatever new cool tool is DevOps. So probably shouldn't explain that to you, but it's worth pointing out. Only for startups. I would just say it's easier in startups, but you really need it more in those big enterprises. Who's here from those traditional big enterprises? Raise your hand. A few? So not that much. But you're up to a real challenge. Well, the next one. It's not going to work. It's simply not going to work. Well, people said the same thing about Facebook, Wikipedia, wikis. People will never collaborate. No, they do. It's just like you have to create the platform for people to collaborate. And you see, it's a global mindset in the world where it's in IT or Facebook or whatever. Like the barriers, it's becoming horizontal. So we're doing away with the traditional structure of people imposing what we have to do. It's people self-organizing themselves on a horizontal level instead of a vertical saying you have to do this. And if you think back about the slide that we don't have a real process, like Facebook itself, people collaborating on Facebook, there is no process. People simply do it. They collaborate. Nobody told them you should first do A, then B, then C. This is how you collaborate. No, people just get it. So it doesn't work. And then typically for the traditional ones, security. Oh, you can't do DevOps. Oh, scary. Everybody root access. So, yeah, repeatable, isn't that good for security? Preventing failure, isn't that good for security? Shared responsibility, but sometimes people mistake it for like no responsibility. That's not the case. So you can do that. And the multiple eyes principle, that's probably the most argued. They say, well, when I like you, I collaborate with you, it's easy to get like a sign-off from you. But probably if you don't trust people collaborating, saying on a two-way street that it's good, then you probably have a trust problem as well. So I heard yesterday a good story about someone committing to Git, and then the next person has to like say, I approve. This is like something to multiple eyes principle, no? It's not one guy saying, I have to do something on the production machine directly, and nobody knows, and nobody will know. But okay. So it's good for security, in my opinion. Will render obsolete. Yeah, so there is something going on, of course, like the cloud, SaaS, and it totally changes the context, how you work with infrastructure and how it gets an API, so you start coding. So, but it's an abstraction. And abstractions are leaky, meaning they will fail at some time. So, and when they fail, you want to see the internals and you want to understand the internals, or at least have a way to recover from it, or to notice that it will fail. When Amazon failed with the epic fail, okay, were you able to move to another data cloud? Or were you able to move to another region? These kind of thoughts and detecting the problem, even with the cloud, you still have to do. You could say, yeah, but I do SaaS, so the SaaS provider is actually taking care of all that. But when he fails, what do? Are you simply going to sit back and wait? Don't you want to alert your customers saying there's a problem? So all these things still apply, but they're changing in the context. So I don't see it go away, but it's just like the boundaries of where we are working in, they're just changing, but we still need to do ops work. Maybe it's the same person who does both, but it doesn't really matter. It's still ops is there. And I would rather have specialists collaborating than only generalists collaborating. Because it gives you a certain depth of knowledge you would not have when you only have generalists working together. Of course, if they want to specialize too, it's probably going to meet somewhere in the middle. But a specialist will give you more in-depth view, and if he's willing to collaborate, that's probably a more powerful model than a generalist getting together and being mediocre because they just don't know and are trying to figure out while they're running. And it's not going to go away. Ops is not going to go away. It just frees time of all those pesky tasks we have been doing in the past. So it allows us to spend more time in the design or in the beginning of the cycle when a new application goes live. So this is where we actually see the difference. Instead of being obsolete, they become involved again in the design process. This is something I've been noticing through all the stories of people doing DevOps. They get back to the drawing table instead of just being at the end. You need to have elite people. So only a few can do both, and you have to have the background. It's bullshit, you know? Everybody just can collaborate. Cross-training, of course, helps to get the mindset and to understand both worlds. It's not asshole-proof, so nothing more than kumbaya, buzzword. After 2 years, people are starting to see it as a buzzword that they have to abandon. Probably because the vendors are like putting the tag DevOps sort of on the label. Has it jumped the shark? I don't know. I don't think so. It will simply not go away. There is an increase in collaboration. People are starting to do that, and it's becoming the differentiator in the world currently. But it might become very common in a few years. Like, this is the model. Everybody's doing it, so it's a given. There's no problem. And of course, tool vendors only the fools believe that tools can solve their human side of the problem. But after all this negative, whatever, feedback, don't spend too much time on that. Because you're gonna have an endless fight when people are saying, oh, you can't do it, it's bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Just find the allies that you can work in your company. It could be in your own group. Preferably go out to different groups and talk to people and find like-minded people to get it going. But also seek management support. If you're not seeking management support, it's like agile, it's bottom-up, top-down. If you have both, it's much more powerful. If you don't, well, you're probably optimizing still locally within the area of responsibility you can reach. But if you have management support, it's probably going to give you a wider reach, and the impact will be higher. Then you pick a small project. So it's just whatever that you can pick. It could be like, okay, with a tool-centric view, infrastructure as code or whatever, or it can just simply be like, let's sit together and change our process on how we can better get our requirements or non-functional requirements into your scope, in your discussion. Are we there at the sprint review and so on? So it doesn't have to be like a project on a technical level. It can just be like, let's change a bit of the way we work. That can be enough. But it's important that when you have success in that, it will give you the trust you require to continue. So pick something small, something you know you can do, and you will build on that. Don't take on the whole world at once. Sounds crazy, but some people are off like, okay, we're going to do DevOps, but we're going to change the world, the whole organization. That's very noble of you, but it's probably going to fail. And the best way to pick a problem is where there's real pain, because there people are willing to find an alternative. It's like me going to that doctor and being traditional minded with medicine, and he has another way of viewing things. I would probably not have gone to him when I didn't have a real problem. It's the same with open source. You can't convince an enterprise to use open source if they've never experienced vendor lock-in. It's just so much easier to explain that once they have experienced the pain. So it's willingness for change. And like you said, just do it. Show off. Do it. This will tell you so much more than keep on talking like me now about the whole problem. So just do it. Be bold. Yeah, I'm in an ops group. I'm not allowed to go to the dev group. So what's stopping you? Your manager? I doubt it. In cases I've seen, nobody came up to me and said, you're not allowed to talk to the dev people. Maybe he said to me like, well, you don't have commit rights to the code, or you're not the guy. But they never stopped me from talking to these people and collaborating. But sometimes people feel restricted, but it isn't. I once went in for a project doing disaster recovery. Although it was a disaster, the company, that was not my point of the problem. But I said to myself, okay, what do I do now? These guys even don't have working infrastructure, so There's no use of me solving disaster recovery. So to do my job, should I just stick with your job assignment, doing a disaster recovery plan, or trying to improve the reliability of the environment? And I chose to improve the environment because to me, this was actually the way I had to do my job. It's not what somebody told me to do, but I found it the solution to what he was asking. So don't always listen to the person. You have to listen to him that he has a problem, but you don't always have to listen to him on the solution level. It can get scary though, once you get across the groups and you start talking, and then I ended up talking to all the project managers in one room who were throwing everything to the ops group and said, okay, you need to prioritize. We have only a limited set of resources, so we can't do anything at the same time. They couldn't agree on the priorities. After a few iterations, they could. And then their upper manager came spoiling the party by saying, you're the most important project, get it done. So he was erasing every consensus back again by changing the way people were working. And at a certain moment, I said to myself, I can't fix this. So you have to ask to yourself, what do I do? Okay, I was lucky, I'm a consultant, I can go away very easily. And I did. But I did only after trying very hard to make it work and to make them collaborate. But it's scary when you see a company not having like a global vision where to go to. So this will get you into a mess, but it's interesting, but you cannot always solve or take upon you the whole company structure. So when you have the success, give credit to people. So handouts, send out mails like, you really solved my problem. It's like giving compliments. It's like to your son or whatever, saying you did a good job. It's very simple, but it grows people to do new stuff because they did great. Very simple. Nothing to do with DevOps, just with change management in general. And communicating these results to the outside is very important. You measure what you improve. So whatever you've had in mind to improve, kind of try measure. We do it upfront like this. This is what we did, maybe in time, maybe in quality, maybe the number of bugs, the number of calls, doesn't matter. But start measuring, because this will give you like a way to objectively tell people you improve things. Of course, every metric can be gained, but it really shows you that it's just not a feeling that something improved, that there's at least something you tracked that you improved. So when you're doing this, retrospective, inspect and adapt, it's something most people forget. They keep on going and doing, but just take some time after the first success. So maybe we don't have to prove the way we solve something technically, but maybe we have to do a better PR job to the other groups. So these kind of things are also in your retrospective. It's not only we have to do a better technical job. So when you start doing this, I often get questions like, should we have a separate DevOps team? I heard people saying, I'm a DevOps. It's like, if people tell that on Twitter, you have 10 people twittering to you, DevOps is not a job title. Well, you know, at the moment, there is value in creating a change task force. If you call that DevOps, I'm fine with it. If you keep this a permanent structure in your organization, it will keep on taking you energy and energy and energy. So it's kind of something that you lead the change, but your aim is to put it into the organization. So the temporary thing like the change task force can go away. So make it temporary in a sense. And yeah, for the job title, it's very effective currently. It's changing a little bit because it's beginning very CAO optimized. People are just putting in a term. But for the moment, it's still good. If people have heard of the term, they're kind of active in the community. They kind of looking for alternatives. So for the moment, it's still good. But probably it's going to be like somebody said, a buzzword again and become useless. But how do you measure that we actually had a success? That's interesting, but collaboration can be measured as such. I did a presentation on that, and you can count the number of interactions between people, but that's it. It would be saying like we do 20 deploys a day or we do 20 emails a day, but it doesn't tell you anything on the quality of what's actually happening. So it's like saying it's a good party if you talk to 20,000 people. It's useless as such. So you can't directly measure collaboration as such. You have to look like a black hole at everything that's going on around it. So it could be like increasing quality, like I said, performance, interactions, bugs going away, these kind of things. So don't, in my opinion, don't try to measure collaboration as such. Where's the manifesto? Okay. So just reread the original one with an open mindset. That should be enough. I understand people asking for it, but it's mostly people new to Agile and they say like, oh, shouldn't we have our own? But kind of defeats the purpose now. To have your own and then say, we have our own, but we're trying to collaborate. I know people have been rewriting the Agile manifesto, or at least trying to do it multiple times. And these people gave up anyway too. So why should we start another one? It has all the values as such in it, but it's just like, maybe it's not when the software is delivered, but when the functionality is delivered in production. So it's not ITIL. So who has ITIL in his organization currently? It's a few. Probably the same with the people from the big enterprises, no?
What is it?
You don't want to know? So ITIL, there's like 6 or 7 volumes on how to collaborate in IT, but it tends to resolve to become a bureaucratic, like something. There is nothing in the books. I've now read them again twice to find something that's actually saying you should not collaborate. There isn't anything in the book I could find. Actually, in version 3, there's much more about continuous improvement, working together than ever before. So there's nothing blocking you, but it's just bureaucratic in a way that it's being used to avoid change. And Visible Ops book, for those who are familiar, pointed it out very well. It's about uncontrolled change. It's not blocking change in general. It's just we don't want to have uncontrolled change. That's it. Which is fair, which I guess everybody can live with. And we are trying to resolve as well. But things might be changing. Like infrastructure as code is probably going to change the way we're looking to a CMDB. It's not a reverse, it used to be like a reverse engineering or manual entered way of whatever is there in your infrastructure. But maybe now it becomes more like a defined set of definitions that you put in your CMDB. So these are maybe subtle changes, but it just shows like ITIL as well is probably gonna, in the practices, it's gonna have changes on coping with these things. And let's say you are doing like 20 deploys a day. It's gonna be hard to do that with a change advisory board saying, okay, yes, yes, yes. So what's happening, in my opinion, is that the whole automation and faster feedback and especially the tests are making that small changes, incremental changes, are becoming standard changes that are just like tick off the box automatically. Because it's a standard change. We know how to do that. It's nothing more. So it becomes like a non-event on a change advisory board. And we can actually now start doing the more important work, like where there's real risk, where we really have to argue about, where we really have to be sure that it's happening, like database schema changes that can have much more impact when you do that. This is where I guess is changing the way a change advisory board will work in the future too. And maybe the sign-off will not be anymore in that central part to change advisory board. It will become like the team deciding whether they are ready to release. It's shifting like the responsibility, whether it's a shared team responsibility. I've seen it so many times, like you're in a change advisory board, these people are arguing, but they have like no in-depth knowledge of the actual risk or the actual problem it's taking. People in the field, they know, and I probably have a better feeling of signing off the request yes and no than people just discussing it in a change advisory board. I still think it's useful for challenging people, like, have you really thought about it? Can we validate it? Whether the change is successful, where's your role back? So these questions still apply, but maybe it shouldn't be that central organ that just decides yes or no and then puts it back into a delay of 2 weeks where you're like, oh, I need this tomorrow because I have to do a new client or something. This question keeps on popping up. Well, okay, very simple. It's not about the tools. So it's not about the windows, but my personal feeling is that they have a more GUI-oriented closed source history, and maybe Microsoft has driven them into more like relying on a central partner, where the Linux and the open source, they're already very used to sharing and collaborating on that platform. It's a hunch, I'm not sure, but I know people are now actively working on it. For example, we had a person from Microsoft itself coming to Mountain View, Devopsdays, and at the Göteborg in Europe, they're actually becoming actively involved to find a solution and work on the way. Of course, that's at the tool level, but they're trying to get into the field, not with just, let's say, this is our traditional product folio, pick anything and we'll put the label DevOps on it, but to do something similar as infrastructure as code. So it's going to be interesting. They're becoming interested in the field as well. Is there a DevOps certification? Okay, really. Last thing, again, is the process police, and that's about it. So don't you worry about that. So where is that cookbook? I want to do it, I want to do it. Use the guiding principles that are already there. I wish I could tell you, like, this is the roadmap to do, but I won't do it, and there is no use. So it's new, we're collecting data, like, what are people doing in this field? How do they do it? There's a lot of stories on the tool level, which is good. People learn from that. I would like to see more stories on the process level of our interaction level. That's probably has been the second year of DevOps to get those stories out. So we're kind of collecting those. Things like, okay, parent admin with the developer web pages. These are kind of recurring teams that people who have started doing that, they have like, okay, makes sense maybe to do that. So it's like, well, there is no best practices, but good practices you can learn from or you can experiment with. So that's the idea, to collect those. And actually, it's one of those rare things that it's a grassroots moment. So it's actually your chance now to help us with your story. So blog, tweet, whatever, find out this is how you can actually contribute And that's what DevOps Days is about. It's getting together, share stories, especially in the open spaces, and talk to each other so we can actually learn from each other. So thank you for being here. And that makes you awesome. And this is a real message. DevOps is a verb. Start doing it, and it's actively collaborating in the feedback loop. So this is my message to you. Thank you.